wasn't until my mom's deathbed where I finally got the truth of what happened. Here I am teaching about attachment all around the world and writing about it as though I know something about it without knowing I knew something about it. And I kept saying, Mom, what happened? Nothing. Everything was fine. And then in her deathbed, she said, oh, you really must have wanted to live. We already had kids. We didn't want any more kids. So I did everything to try to end the pregnancy.
Welcome to Wired and Worthy, the podcast for people who feel everything deeply, think about everything constantly, and have spent way too long believing that they were too much. I'm Dr. Amelia Kelley, your host, someone who believes the way you're wired was never the problem. You belong here exactly as you are. Because remember, you may be wired differently, but you are worthy always. Let's get into it. Today on Wired and Worthy, we have an incredible guest, Mark Wolynn, who is a leading expert in the field of inherited family trauma and the director of the Family Constellation Institute, and also happens to be the international bestseller of the book, It Didn't Start With You. So if you have ever wondered, how and why did I suddenly struggle with certain issues? Why can't I stop getting into these negative relationships? Why do I struggle trusting? Or why have I suddenly acquired headaches out of nowhere that are unexplained, just as one physical example? He unpacks why our family trauma, as far back as generation to generation before us, can have direct impacts on our physical, mental health, and our attachments. This conversation was incredible. I learned new things about myself and my own traumas, and I think you will too. So as he said, take a moment, think about the family you came from, shake that family tree a little bit, see what falls out, and see how we can work through this with the incredible Mark Wolynn. Let's get into it. Mark, you're here on Wired and Worthy, and I am really excited to talk to you. I'm excited because I feel like you have lived the journey that a lot of us talk about of working through inherited family trauma, and the way that you're able to share that, and you've done so in your wildly popular book on the topic as well, is just from such an honest but also informed space. I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So, Mark, if we could jump just straight in, getting into what you would consider inherited family trauma to be, and also maybe why this started to be such a meaningful topic for you.
That's both of those questions are good. The second one's going to take me into a case, I think, that taught me how to look for it. Let me start with what is inherited trauma. So we see this a lot. A young woman in her mid-20s or 30s, she's dating, she's choosing all the wrong guys. One relationship after another crashes and burns, and she blames herself. She thinks she's defective. Her self-esteem is in the gutter. She thinks maybe something happened in her childhood. But when we look at the childhood, it's pretty average. It's okay. But she doesn't understand why her life is spiraling. So what she doesn't realize, and I see this a lot, is that there's a trauma, the one that may have happened to her mother or her grandmother. In this case, the case that I'm thinking about, her grandmother was in her mid-20s, and she loses her husband in an accident, and she stays alone, and she never dates again. And the grandma, actually, what's interesting is her mother in the same age range in her mid-20s separates and stays alone. So there's this unconscious loyalty in the family to being alone from the mid-20s onward. And this sits at the root of her relationship struggles. So, when I think of this one case, grandpa dies in this accident, grandma's alone, but the trauma chemically alters the genes in this family, the genes that get passed down to the granddaughter. And, I guess I would say this, that we need to realize that the reaction to a trauma doesn't necessarily stop with the people who experienced it. So the feelings, the sensations, specifically the stress response, the way the genes express, this can pass forward to the children and the grandchildren affecting them in a similar way, even though they didn't personally experience a trauma themselves.
First and foremost, I love the example you gave because I think a lot of people listening can relate to that because they can't necessarily pinpoint like that exact moment. Or yeah, a lot of therapists, I think, have a tendency to ask, what was it in your childhood, or is a time you can remember, like something conscious that happened to you that would point the direction and why this is happening?
And it's funny that you bring that up because that's exactly, we tend to go with what we remember, but our memory doesn't come online until age 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And yet the massive amount of trauma that exists before in utero or in the first few years of life, this is often at the core of what's happening, but we don't think to look there because we can't remember it.
Right.
So, and I'm sure we're going to get into attachment. I'll have a lot to say specifically about sensitivity and thinking we're too much or we're not enough, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, and actually, so I'm not afraid to share a little personally here that I think might build this relationship or this conversation around relationships.
Right.
I was listening. I told you I listened to your book as opposed to reading it. Guilty pleasure. I tend to like physically hold my kind of fiction books, and then I listen to my psycho ed books. I don't know. It's like the way I like to digest them a lot of times, or sometimes I'll have both. But so I was listening to the section in your book about, you had a couple different examples of how trauma that can happen when someone is pregnant, like you were talking about like different
Right.
famines and different like wars and different things that were occurring and how they're seeing, and maybe you could unpack a little bit of that briefly just so people kind of know where we're coming from, but how that can then impact the baby that is in utero at the time. I
Yeah.
have to tell you, I had a very kind of, "Oh, no," response because I was pregnant, at the same time that my husband was hit by a drunk driver, my family
Oh,
home burned down and
oh,
has been since repaired, and COVID began.
yeah.
And then I had my son.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yes.
I had this moment, and I'm thinking of people who are hearing our message of thinking like, "Oh, no, is that just is that it? Like, is there no way to come back from that or repair or
It's
be able to get
easily
through that?"
repairable. We just have to know what happened. So I'm a big believer in, the brain needs to know so the body can let go. And if we know what we're looking for. So you asked me this question in utero, and I'd like to go there actually,
Yeah, let's
because
do it.
so much of what we're going to talk about lives there. So I'm going to give a bunch of examples.
Okay.
So our mom is pregnant with us. She just conceives us, but in the background, she loses the baby before us.
Which I've also
She's had,
experienced. Yeah.
okay, so she has a miscarriage or another miscarriage, and she's worried that this pregnancy might not come to fruition. So even though she may forget this when we ask her later, she's thinking, oh no, what if this baby doesn't live? I don't feel her kicking. Maybe something's wrong. And that's creating a well of cortisol, a swirl of cortisol in her system, affecting our attachment, affecting our connection. So, I'm going to do an image with my hands, for those that are watching, but the fetus trying to reach up to feel the mother, the connection can't through this cloud, this swirl of cortisol that it feels chaotic. Where's my mummy? I'm in this womb and I can't feel. It's not only that. Let's say she's pregnant out of wedlock. Let's say she's pregnant but doesn't love our dad. Let's say she's pregnant with us but feels trapped, had to give up her dreams. All of this could create, or there's a physical issue. She starts spotting, or she thinks, oh my God, the baby could be harmed. I lifted that box. I drank that glass of wine. All of this can create cortisol, which can impact the bond even before we're out in the sunlight, before we're out of the womb. So we need to, when we look in terms of neurodevelopment, the most important time for neurodevelopment is in the womb and the first couple years of life. And this is before we have memory. This is when our brain is being wired for safety or lack of safety. During this time, our mom is installing the software for well being, whether we feel safe or whether we feel threatened, whether we feel relaxed in life or whether we feel hypervigilant. And, this is all before we have memory. So if something happened, the examples that you were giving, my husband's hit by a car, the house burns down, this can impact your stress.
Of
And what we know
course.
from epigenetics, that stress can affect genetic or epigenetic reactions, so alterations. And so your question, is our baby okay? Is our kid okay? Absolutely. We just have to hold them and reassure them. And, maybe when they're old enough, if we still see this playing out, just say, let me tell you what happened. It wasn't until, I'll share a personal story. It wasn't until my mom's deathbed where I finally got the truth of what happened. Here I am teaching about attachment all around the world and writing about it as though I know something about it. Without knowing I knew something. And I kept saying, Mom, what happened? Nothing. Everything was fine. And then in her deathbed, pretty much a few years before she passed, she said, oh, you really must have wanted to live. We already had kids. We didn't want any more kids. So I did everything to try to end the pregnancy. And I said, like what? She said, I'd roll down the steps on my belly. I'd have your dad pull me down by the ankles. I mean, and the funny thing is, I came out with my head concave and black and blue and triangular, as though to say it's not a great idea
Yeah.
to. But I'm sure I was loved afterwards. But I knew something about that turbulent. So I have a chapter called the turbulent womb, and where, because if we think about it, the heart comes online in 20 to 30 days, the baby's heart.
Yeah.
And the neural tube
Incredible.
and neural groove, that which becomes the nervous system, comes online 20 to 30 days. So basically, after the first month, the baby has some degree of somatic awareness, sentience. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder about the corrective experiences and the opportunities because, well, so for example, my son was born at the beginning of COVID, so you can do the math. He's very young still. And I'm not about to tell him all these things that happened now, but
No.
I do strongly agree that when the time comes, when I feel like he's mature enough, that I'm definitely going to be telling my kids about what was happening during that time, especially because they're both very sensitive. They're both very receptive and empathetic, and they can't not know. I mean, as much as we try to do what we can, but I do remember there being, and in a way, I feel like COVID protected us. I know that's an odd thing to say, but because life slowed down a lot
Mm.
and there wasn't a lot of people that were coming to visit, and there was a lot of one-on-one, like, deep connection time. I felt instantly when he came out, like, I know you.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's right there, a mitigating event. You have this time to be with your child. Mothers are always asking me, well, what do I do? I know I had a break in the bond. I didn't love his father, or I didn't, I was married out of wedlock. I felt shame. I felt embarrassment. I didn't even want to be married, but I did, so there's all these things. And basically we have to do with our kids, in the sense, what we've done with ourselves, teach them to be attuned to what they're feeling. So, a good question to ask our small children is, "Oh, honey, when that boy rejected you at school, or when they bullied you, what does that feel like? What's going on in your body?" "Mommy, I feel sick." "Honey, where do you feel sick?" "Here." And then we, as the mother, put our hand on the child's body where they don't feel well, and just this one sentence, "Honey, thank you for showing mommy where you don't feel well, where you feel sick. Mommy's just going to keep her hand here and breathe with you until you feel okay." just that sentence. The child learns to pair not feeling well with being attuned to and being comforted, which is everything.
That's incredible. And it's not, "You're fine. This will get better. Things
No,
will be okay,"
it's not
right?
your fine. It's absolutely not your fine. It's not your fine. It's honey, when that happened, when the boys did that, when you fell down, when you lost your ball, when you got bullied, what happens in your body? Tell me, I want to learn. And oh, mommy, I feel bad. I feel tight. Honey, show mommy where you feel tight. And right there, bingo. You know, and what we've done is we're supplying the attunement that got altered during the trauma, because there's no time in the unconscious, and there's no time. We're repairing it now because the trauma happened then.
And I wonder, in your opinion, how does this then play into people who, like, say they call themselves empaths, or they say they're always hyper attuned to how others are feeling at all times? And I'm saying empath almost interchangeably with
Yeah,
highly
yeah,
sensitive.
yeah. Oh, I have a lot to say about this.
Okay, go for it.
Okay,
I'm here.
all right. So, all right. I'll do sensitive number one and sensitive number two.
That sounds great.
Okay, sensitive. So when we have a break in the bond, part of that being sensitive is biological. Our amygdala, which can grow twice its normal size because, we've had a trauma, we're actually scanning our environment for threats.
Did you say twice
So,
its normal size? Is that
yes,
I've
I
never heard
did.
that before.
Yes, I did. And an
Wow.
amygdala, which is part of the limbic brain, which is
Right.
part of the whole trauma center, then this part of the brain can swell to twice its normal size, become hypertrophic because it's become enlarged. And so we become hyper attuned to what can hurt us. Like remember when you read my book, I talked about those mice that feared the cherry blossom
Yes,
scent.
and didn't the smell centers grow or
Yes,
something?
yes,
Yeah, it's
yes, yes,
so wild. And was it 3 generations back that they found
yes.
that?
I'll
That's
quickly tell
crazy.
the story. Mice, they put this smell in the cage and the mice smell it, but then they shock them. So the mice, they look at the brains in the first generation, and they right there, there's enlarged areas of the brain where there's a greater amount of smell receptors. So their brains can detect that threatening smell where they get a shock afterwards at lesser concentrations. So part of our sensitivity is biological, that our brain has adapted
Yeah.
to be sensitive, to be protective. That's sensitive number one. Please
So
ask me. You're
so
about to
I
say
have a
something.
really crazy theory that is probably off the wall, but I feel like you probably don't mind off the wall ideas. We as a society are correcting a lot of biological issues right now with GLP drugs. Let's also look, just this is an off the wall thought. We are also first and second generation from World War II. We're all these generations. I think I'm saying this because my family was starved out of the Ukraine and we're refugees here. And
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me, hunger feels like danger. Like I can
yeah,
feel
absolutely.
like hangry is real for me. And then you have my husband who is like third generation American. Like they were here forever and he doesn't have the same response to hunger as I do.
I
So
agree.
I just
Yeah,
wonder
no.
if there's something to that.
Yeah, but yes, absolutely. And if you're asking me, I before, even though drugs can be quite helpful, before we do any drugs, it's you're preaching to the choir here, but it's like, can we just be with that and explore it and then integrate
Yeah.
it,
And I'm certainly not
to,
saying if people should or shouldn't be on it. I'm just
yeah,
noticing this like
nor am
wild,
I. I'm
like
just
that
saying
so
there's
many
enough.
people are needing it or seeking it. And it's like what was happening before to all of our
You
metabolisms.
just said it.
Yeah.
What was happening before we had the need for the intervention, the need for the drug? Because if we can be with these places inside, it's just what we taught our kid by honey, what happens when you got bullied in your body? If we can stay with those places, we can integrate those fight, flight, freeze responses,
Right.
which are at the core of the impulses. And then we can maybe have a different avenue rather than taking drugs. But no, I like your theory, and I want to talk about sensitive number two. So sensitive number one, we're biologically geared to being hyper aware, hyper attuned to things that can hurt us, and hence we're sensitive. So, for example, if the environment of our mom's womb was disrupted because of her stress,
Right.
I've noticed that many people go out into the world and that environment is scary. So they're overly sensitive to smells, to light, to sounds, to nature, to the sun, they're oversensitive as a biological predecessor, being in the womb where it occurred, and now it's playing out in the larger womb called life, where they're sensitive to their environment because the womb was scary,
Yeah.
terrifying. So that's okay. We're still at sensitive number one. Sensitive number two is many of us, you and me, and probably a gazillion of the listeners, where our mother didn't let herself feel her painful feelings. And we are born feeling everything, almost as a way to say, Mom, this is what you felt at my age, but you shut it down. You
Okay.
shut it down, Mom. You didn't let yourself feel it. For example, um, going back to a break in the attachment, we have a break in the attachment, but we shut down our neediness, our neediness. We shut down our clinginess because we went into the smart mind that said, I will never be a fool and need anybody or be clingy. I will be independent and not need anybody. That's the defense. That's the strategy. But then our kid comes out clinging and needy with us, showing us what we felt at their age, but have long ago suppressed.
I can
And
absolutely see that. I can think of clients, I can think of personal examples. Like that's a very interesting, it's almost like the overcorrection.
correct. Oh, you nailed it. That's right. The overcorrection that we're come into the family to bring balance back into the family. So I'm born into a family that doesn't feel. They come from the famine in Ukraine, let's say. And let's say everybody becomes stoic and strong and intelligent and whatever they become,
Yeah, you're explaining a lot of my a lot of that
efficient,
family.
capable,
Yeah.
intelligent, invulnerable. It's but
And I'm like the
then
therapist, the
that
like black
that's right.
sheep that
And you come in feeling everything to say, hey guys, we've got to bring this family back into balance. So I'm coming in to feel what we have blocked as a family, to feel what we have shut down, to basically say, Mom, Dad, this is the truth. This is our authenticity. These panic attacks that I have, this is the truth of what you felt when your mom died young. Dad, this is the truth of what you felt when you were put in boarding school or daycare too early or foster care, but you can't let yourself feel it. So I'm showing you by being your child, really your inner child, who's your outer child. I'm your outer child who's
Yeah.
mirroring to you what your inner child felt.
Okay, so then what about the ownership of that? Like, is that something we have to own? And how do we, it almost makes me think of like
Wait, who's the
cord
we?
clearing.
Who's
We meaning if we're walking around holding those sensitivities or holding the emotions for the family, it sounds like you're saying step 1 is recognizing that it's happening, and sometimes that means finding the story to figure out that that's happened. Okay, so now we know this. We know, okay, so I come from immigrants, or I come from, and this is like other people, like I come from a mother who was being bullied or abused, or I come from famine or whatever. And now it's like I'm feeling the feelings, I'm doing the process that other people couldn't do. How do I stop this process so
aha?
that I
Well,
don't have
now
to keep doing this for
you're
all of
stepping
these other
into the
people?
territory here of family
Mhm.
constellations. We're in
Okay.
a we're in a family constellation. Some of the dialogue might go like this: Mom, I've been grieving your losses, but these aren't my losses. and I can't keep doing this. This is what happened to you. Mom, this is your history and it's living through my body, and it's merely setting another generation on a path of suffering. And I can't do that. I have to leave these feelings with you, Mom. And when I feel them, I have to find them in my body and breathe them back to where they come from.
To the person? The
Yeah,
generation?
to our mom or dad. Yeah, Dad, I've been carrying these feelings because you couldn't feel them, and they're not mine to carry. And every time they appear in my body, I have to recognize the source of you losing your dad, you losing your mom, you being in foster care, you being adopted. And I have to breathe these back to you because, yes, they're epigenetically imprinted in my epigenome. That's true, but they're not mine.
And what if the person that we say this to is either gone or unsafe to be around? Do we
We're
have
not
to
saying
say
it to
it?
them.
Okay,
No, we're
okay,
saying
so this is
we're saying it.
internal.
Yeah, these are internal sentences.
Okay,
We're
okay.
saying it to their photo. We're saying it to their inner image. We're saying it in our heart. We do it in a family constellation because in a constellation, you have representatives stand as the mother or stand as the father. And yeah. And then, sometimes when we have a parent who likes to do work or is very interested in growth, it's something we can say.
Yeah,
Dad, Mom, Dad, I've been carrying these feelings and they're really not mine. And I've been doing this and I see where they come from. Must have been so hard for you as a small kid, Dad. And but I can't live this way. It's affecting my relationship. Here's a common one.
okay.
It's that I'm going to go back to relationship. It's that girl I was talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
She's 20 years old or 25 and she's, choosing all the wrong people. So here's another dynamic that affects relationships. Our parents didn't do well with each other. And so, unconsciously loyal to our parents, we don't do well. So, for example, our father mistreated our mother, or our father cheated on our mother. And as the girl, we also get mistreated, or we also get cheated on. And then in that way, it's almost an unconscious loyalty to say, Mom, the woman says, Mom, this is unconscious. She's not saying it to her mom.
Right.
Mom, that you don't suffer alone, I'll suffer too. Or Dad, it says the guy, Dad, that you cheated and you were the philanderer, that you're not the bad guy alone, I'll cheat too. You see? Yeah.
Definitely. How do we know we're doing this? Like, how do we yeah, help.
Well, that's the key, right? We don't. And then one day we end up with the right clinician because we don't know we're doing this, where we believe we're wired this way. See, this is what I hear all the time. A guy comes into therapy and he's depressed and he's got panic attacks and hypervigilance. And he says, well, this is just the way I am. I'm wired this way. And I go, really? So it's you, huh? Well, let's take a look. So we look at attachment. We go, yeah, you're right. This is how you got wired. Smart. Or we look in the generations. Go, dude, this isn't you. This is, it may be imprinted in the epigenome,
Right.
but this is not your feeling. It didn't start with you like the famous book. It didn't start with you.
Yeah, if any of you have ever heard of that book somewhere. Speaking of your book, when I had mentioned that I was going to get to sit down with you, I did ask a couple people, like, if you could ask him anything, what would it be? And there was universally this one topic that people, I don't want to say they struggled with, but I think they just want like some clarity or some support around, is the ideas around the necessity of forgiveness, and especially if the person that they're working to forgive is dangerous or deeply abused them or something like that in the life they're living, not kind of generationally. Do you have any thoughts
So
on
one
that?
of
I
the
know I'm
things,
throwing a hardball at
no, you're
you.
not. No, I love
Mhm,
it because
mhm.
it's I say it in the book. Healing is an inside job, and Healing is about an inner reconciliation. We've got to heal within before we even think of healing without. Because if we haven't done the inner work in our core, we're just going to go home and shrink or collapse or get offended against our parents and be tight, or we're going to go into caretaking mode. And all of those things um, don't support anybody.
Right.
So we go home and we're still shrinking, collapsing, caretaking. We can't heal in real time. I always say, never throw yourself in front of a moving train. If your parents are dangerous, don't do it.
Okay.
Work with their photo, work with their inner image. But the real work first is within. So if I develop my core to be able to heal, to be able to integrate my fight, flight, freeze responses, my defenses, then all of a sudden I can go home no matter how my parents are, and I don't get triggered because I've done the work. So they can still have a funny story. Um, my mom on her deathbed was still the same person who hadn't done the work. I remember I was the only child out of the five of us who ever left the city and
Oh,
moved to
wow.
a different state. And I remember, being in my 50s and saying to my mom, oh, mom, she goes, oh, honey, why don't you move home? And I go, oh, mom, I know you're happy for me. I'm married. I'm in California. I have a great life out there. She goes, no, I want you to come home. So it's,
Wait, on her deathbed, she's saying
yeah,
that?
pretty much.
Oh my
Why
goodness.
don't you just move home? I don't care that you're happy, your life's well. But she didn't mean it that way. It's just,
Yeah.
and that would have triggered somebody else. That would have been, oh, she still is. But I laughed. I was hysterical. I just said, oh, mom, come on, that's not true. Because the work is so we're neutral. The work is so we no longer have a charge. Because if we go home charged by their emotional responses, we're not ready to heal in person. We can't do it because we're still having the former reactivity, the
Right.
fight, flight, freeze responses from our early upbringing when our parents were harsh, brutal, cruel, uncaring, critical, etc. The work has to happen within. I say it over and over and over again. Remember the Harvard Mastery of Stress study that
No,
I
I
talked
don't. I
about?
might have I might know what it is,
Oh,
and when you start explaining it.
I'll just say it. So it's this. It was a longitudinal study that they looked at for 35 years. Kids were 21, and they asked them one question: describe your relationship with your mom and with your dad. And then they gave you a checklist of four. It
Okay.
was either very close, warm and friendly, tolerant, or strained and cold.
Interesting. Okay.
So the people that answered warm and friendly, oh, no, let's do the other one first. The
Yeah.
people that answered with their mother, for example, that 35 years later, when they were 56,
Oh, wow,
when
that is
they
a long
answered,
study.
yeah. When they answered that it was strained, cold, or tolerated, 91% of them had a significant health issue like cancer, coronary
Oh,
artery
like A
disease,
scale type style
diabetes.
stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Compared
Yeah.
with only 45%, less than half, who said they were warm, close, and friendly. So healing with the parents, either
Yeah.
in real time or inwardly, it's a health choice, is how I look at it.
I love yeah, that's a great way to put that, and I like that you're clarifying that this is absolutely not something that you need to be putting yourself in, like, a vulnerable position or going to the person even. This is a matter of releasing yourself in a way. But
Totally.
there's something interesting that comes to my mind when you were talking about that, and I don't know if you've read Judith Herman's book on trauma, and she
Yeah,
was talking about, the fact that a lot of our traumas happen and impact us more when we're most neurodevelopmentally vulnerable at times where we don't have as much control and we don't have as much ability to take charge. And it made me think about what you were saying in the sense of how to be able to be less in like of a charge and how to be able to kind of laugh at something is usually I don't want to call it easier but more possible, I guess. if we don't feel that power struggle as much, if we don't feel like a lack of power, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Okay. So if I go back using myself as the template here,
Yeah.
I
Which I really
was
appreciate you doing, because I know this is a
I
lot of
was
your
highly depressed, panic attacks. As a young man, carried Valiums in my pocket just for fear of the next panic attack.
wow.
Highly stressed, highly. I remember going to an acupuncturist at 30, and he brought me to a class for all his students. He said, "Here is a 30-year-old man who has the heart of a 90-year-old man," and everybody's feeling my pulses, going, "Oh yeah,"
Oh, geez.
My-
That's not what
because
you want to be famous for.
no, I really, but I had done so much work to downregulate my nervous system, to balance my core, to live in my body, to live freely. To at first my thoughts that were so terrifying and my feelings that were intolerable for much of my early life destroyed all my relationships. So being the one who was somebody highly stressed out, to say it in a euphemistic way, that inner work is possible and necessary. So we've got to be able to integrate our fight, flight, freeze responses in our core, so that our core, and I say core, I just mean our inner body, our
Right.
core is a friendly place rather than an inhospitable place like mine used to be. So yeah. I mean, when you get there, it's like, you've seen it, you've worked so much, you've seen it a bunch of times that the reactions aren't there anymore, the old reactions. Or if you get down or anxious, it doesn't last as long. You recover more quickly. You start to be able to make better choices, as we know.
Yeah. And I could see how that would be something, well, 1,000% something that I agree with you. Like, I agree with you in the power of doing that. I've seen it in my clients. I've felt it myself. I'm a strong proponent of, like, we don't. I once said, I said to a client once, like, not forgiving is kind of like letting the person rent a room in your brain rent free, just
Totally.
constantly, and then they're puppeteering how your body reacts. So I strongly agree with you, and I can also see how the less power we have in the relationship, the more difficult that could be to accomplish, even though it's something that we really deserve. Like for a child, for example, where they can't. I remember working with, have you ever worked with kids, or do you primarily work with adults? Like,
I generally work with adults, as I see kids as the expression of what's unresolved. Amelia, here's what I often say.
yeah,
Children will express what's unresolved between the parents, or in the family history, what's unresolved behind the parents, or and they will often mirror to us, like I said earlier, what we felt at their age, but have long ago suppressed.
yeah.
So sometimes when I have great cases of working with children through their parents. I mean, I
Oh,
could
I could
tell
see
you one.
that.
I could tell you one. I think it was in the book, the kid with the burning symptoms.
Oh, I
Do
remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great case.
It
This
sounds
mother's
supernatural. Yeah.
this mother comes this mother comes to me and she says, "My son, he has this horrible burning sensations on his skin. It's just horrific." And I say, "Okay, what do the doctors say?" They go, "They don't know. They just call it an idiopathic neurological condition. They say he's a rare neurological disorder." I go, "Which one?" They go, "They don't know." And I go, "Okay, how old
So
is he?" "Oh,
rare.
yeah, he's so rare. We don't know what it is." He's 16. Okay, when did it start? It started when he was 10. He began experiencing these intense burning sensations on his skin. And the doctors couldn't figure out why this was happening, and they couldn't find any root cause. And I said, "Tell me one set question." I said, "Tell me about his dad when his dad was 10, because I've seen this so many times.
Yeah,
And
you're
this
used
was
to
the
it.
first son." And she goes, "How did you know that?" I go, "I don't know that. But tell me." And so
You're
his
like, "I'll be
dad,
at the next carnival, you can
yeah,
pay."
very great, exactly. His dad's playing with matches at 10, burns the house down,
Oh my
gets
gosh.
his mother out,
Yeah.
but he can't get his brother out. And the brother dies. The father feels guilty. No one in the family is ever allowed to talk about it. And his son at age 10 starts burning. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, there's too many similarities there to even think differently. That makes
Well,
me realize it's funny. I've read your book, but there's something about getting to like sit down and hear you say, and yeah, so I just asked what happened at 10. Like, I wonder why more of us are not doing that, whether it be like for ourselves or for a client. Like, why are we not being curious about this suddenly comes on? Like,
I wrote the book for clinicians initially. You know, it was a manual. It was going to be, I didn't know it would be published. I was going to self publish it. You know, I wrote this manual for my students, you know, how to work with this. And then someone said, get an agent. I go, what's that? And then the rest is history, 3 million copies later. But I ended up rewriting it for both clinicians and as an airport book for the common person, just picking it up saying, what the heck is inherited trauma? And because we need to ask these questions. In the book, I teach people how to do their genogram, not your ancestry.com, but a real traumagram where we start to look, and I, you know, teach people the right questions to ask. And then I ask people to come up with their core sentence, which is the answer to their worst fear. And, you know, all these practices in there that teach people how to ask these questions. So yes, we need to ask these questions. We need to look,
yeah,
for me, okay, so I'm known as the generational guy. You know, I write the book on it. Okay. But 85% of the time, Amelia, I'm working on attachment. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm
yeah,
85% of the time somebody's, so the way I would say it is generational traumas create challenges with mothering and fathering because they had these traumas, their families, the history, the war, the famines. And then our parents who now are shut down, are hyperactive, hyper reactive, um, are able to give less attunement. And then when we don't have the attunement that we need, and you know, this is why I was excited to talk to you. We often then, because we have a break in the attachment, we struggle with fears of being left, or fears of being
yeah.
rejected, or
Or
fears of
fears
being
of being,
abandoned,
I was going to say,
or
or fears of being close.
or fears of being close.
Yeah.
Exactly, because we'll get
Mhm.
hurt. Like the brain that develops those hyper trophic areas. So, you know, there's, or we develop fears of being humiliated or hurt again or shamed, or beliefs that we're not good enough. Or as you said to me in the letter you wrote me, that we'll be too much, or that we don't matter, or we're not important. And we need to understand these sentences that we have in the context of our early relationship with our mother, likely from a time that we don't remember because our memory wasn't on board. But when we become aware of what was missing, then we can give to ourselves what we need in order to heal. You know, like I said earlier, our mother installs the software for well being or lack of well being. And that's the key. If we don't have well-being, it's likely coming from this early wound where our mom couldn't see us, know us, or soothe us.
And I wonder, like, I think about those who are listening who don't know who their mother is sometimes, who can't fill out
Well,
that genogram. Like, what do you say for those
well,
folks?
that's the main work. If we're
Yeah.
adopted, or if we lost our mom early, or we were given away, or our mom, I worked with someone yesterday, his mom died very young. That is the work. You know, you don't need to do a genogram. You know, attachment, the onion of attachment work is continual. You know, I'm still working with pieces of attachment in my marriage. I find behaviors that I go, oh, wow, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And I go, honey, you know, because we're always working
Yeah.
it. The idea
It's
is to be conscious and find it.
I appreciate you saying that because this whole time I'm sitting here thinking about how I react. I feel so physically different, like with my primary attachment with my kids. My primary attachment with my kids is so easy. It is the easiest attachment I have. I feel so comfortable saying I love you to my kids. I'm so comfortable with physical contact with my kids. Everyone else, I have lots of friends. People sometimes joke that I collect people. Like, I love connecting with people. But there's always this kind of hesitation with crossing over in, like, my very best friend from home called me out for never saying I love you to her, even though we've known each other since we were 1. And so I just have this thing where, like, crossing over that for
I have
people
a
who
lot
are
to
not
say.
my children. Yeah, okay.
I have a lot to say about that.
Go for
Okay,
it.
so our kids can't hurt us. I mean, they can later, but when our kids are small, they're vulnerable. They love us so much. They're so needy and vulnerable and open that we can be everything with our kids. Completely vulnerable, completely bonded, completely present, completely available. And then we find either in our relationships with our friends, our partner, or wherever, we're less open. That's the real proving ground for the break in the attachment. So, I a big part of my new book that I'm working on is on relationships and how we
Are you
use
allowed to say
the
what it's called?
I'm not allowed to say what it's
Sorry. You'll have
called,
to tell me
actually.
secretly.
I'm not allowed to give the title away
Well, that's
because
exciting.
it's a killer title, and I just sold it to them. But anyway, the whole second part of the book is how we heal the break in the bond with our partner, and then the third part of the book is how we heal the break in the bond with our children. And the book
I can't
is
wait to read it.
yeah, I can't either wait till it's out there. It's I don't want to write anymore. I'm tired. I'm done. But this is one more coming through me, and I got to do it because it's very clear, and it'll be very important.
I get that. I appreciate that as someone who I can't stop. Sometimes even though I'm like, "Oh gosh, where am I gonna," like, the summer's coming up and I'm like, "Where am I gonna fit my writing in right now?" Because the kids are at school, so it's easier, and yeah, but then you ask and I'm like, "Well, I have this one other one and maybe this other one." You're like, but no, I'm super excited for that one. No, and I appreciate that. That was really helpful and such a simple answer, but it does make me, it shifts my thinking because I thought you were going to say something like, well, I just need to make it more of an awareness in those moments, or maybe I'm feeling hesitant with some. I thought you were going to give me some sort of like instructional thing. And instead you said, well, yeah, because your kids aren't in a position to hurt you. And now I'm thinking, oh, that's like a completely different thing to think about and a completely
So
different way to look at that.
And it always takes us back. Sorry, moms out there in the audience. It always takes us back to if our mom is installing the software for well being and openness and vulnerability or lack of vulnerability, it takes us back to looking at those early relationships, particularly to what we don't remember. What we don't remember. Mom, what happened in the womb? Mom, when I was little, before I had memory, were there any traumas in the family? Mom, what were you thinking and feeling with dad? Mom, was there any affairs going on? Did anyone start drinking? Did anyone die? Mom, did your dad die when I was little? So we have all these questions. They're all in my book, but all these questions to ask our mom if she's still alive. And if she's not, our dad, our cousins, our older siblings, our mother's sister, who can we ask to get this information to the wordless time of history where we don't have memories?
That's a beautiful way to put that. Okay, Mark, I could genuinely talk to you for a whole nother hour, but we both have schedules. I would love to ask you, if just to kind of leave folks who have listened today and they're thinking, okay, I get this, like I'm ready to maybe explore this or move forward. First and foremost, where they can find you, the name of your book again. But what would be like something that you would love to have them either meditate on or put heart into that could help them break whatever bonds or ideas or burdens or cycles that they don't want to carry with them after they turn this episode off?
Okay, so you probably have a lot of people talking about attachment, so I'm not going to go there. I'll go to the initial inherited trauma because that's
Okay.
the more unusual topic and the one that people don't consider. But I would say this: if we or one of our kids is struggling with unexplained symptoms, depression, anxiety, OCD, a phobia, um, a destructive behavior, a self-harming behavior, self-injuring behavior. Of course, our kids may be mirroring to us what we felt at their age, but we shut down. That's true. But I think more importantly, even, or as importantly, we've got to shake the family tree and see what falls out. What family secrets have been hidden, that nobody talked about. What stories didn't get told. What traumas never healed all the way. And then talk to our kids when they're old enough. When they're young, you could say, let's say we're a mom or a dad, and our mom or dad died young. We could draw a picture with our small kids, go, I had a daddy and
Oh,
he
yeah.
died young. And let's draw a picture of my daddy. We could do
Yeah.
things like that to bring the awareness into the family. But get curious and try to work through these traumas yourself, so they're not passed down to your kids or your grandkids. Because the more we know about these traumas, the more we talk about them, the more we're able to bring relief to our children and to their children who could be suffering without a clue. Because we all know this is true. If you ignore the past, it comes back to haunt you. But when we explore it, when we really explore it, we don't have to repeat it. We can break these destructive patterns.
100%. Mark, thank you so much.
Oh,
So
you're so welcome.
yes. So you have to come back when your other book comes out also. Like
I will.
I'm demanding it.
All right.
So where can folks find your work, your book, again, the name of it, the full name if they
Okay.
want it?
So I did two things recently. I updated It Didn't Start With You, and it's a complete different book. It's brand new. I gutted it,
And it's
added all
great.
the
Run out
new.
and get it.
Yeah, I added all this
Here's
new
my copy on
research.
my phone because I listened to it.
I'll hold a copy up. Here we
Yes,
go.
please do. Yeah, I
It's
love that
it
cover
says,
too. It's great.
oh,
Mhm.
thank you. It says fully revised and updated. Is all this new science in there. It's a very cool book. And then I wrote this workbook, and I'm in love with this too. So
Oh,
it's like having a session with me.
oh, that's
So if you
cool. I'll have to
if
go
you
check that
really want
out.
to sit with me and have me guide you to the right questions and do family constellations with you, have you stand in shoes, have you put your mother's shoes in the living room and stand on them and ask you the questions of what you're feeling, or stand as your young self, or stand as yourself in utero, or your grandmother that you never met. Get this book. It's the
That's
official It
awesome.
Didn't Start With You workbook. And then you can find me on my website, markwolynn.com, and I'm on Instagram and all social media.
Yes. Well, I'm going to run out and get that because that looks awesome. I have to check that out. And I can attest that your newly revised book is perfect for trade and clinicians because both
Yes.
myself as a clinician, I enjoyed it and learned new things, and my husband, who is not a clinician and just someone who wants to process, generational stuff, also
Yeah.
enjoyed it. So, like 5 stars from both of us. But Mark, thank you so much for
You're so
coming. It was
welcome.
really nice meeting you and getting to
Yeah.
unpack this with you. And good luck on the writing and publishing. And we'll have you back. So,
Good luck to
for
you and your
yes.
writing
Oh,
too.
thank you.
Yeah.
Very different topic.
Yeah. I'll come back. I loved our
Awesome.
conversation. I'll
Good.
definitely come back.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Good. And for everyone here who's been listening, remembered you may be wired differently, but you are always worthy. Thanks for coming, guys.